Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week you'll hear inspirational stories of heart-centered leaders who have awakened to their higher purpose and taken that leap of faith to follow their heart and make an impact in the world. Get ready to be enlightened, empowered, and transformed with your host, Jennifer Spohr.
I am beyond thrilled to welcome our special guest today, Kristin Sherry. Kristin is a career consultant, international speaker, trainer, and three-time author. She is the managing partner of YouMap LLC, which certifies coaches, consultants, career services, and HR professionals as YouMap coaches and workshop facilitators. Kristin has been a featured career expert on Wharton Business Radio, invited to speak at conferences, events, and radio interviews globally, and has contributed to Entrepreneur Magazine and Inc.com. She is working on her fourth book, Your Team Hates Mondays, Psst, It's You, releasing February 20th, 2020. Welcome, Kristin.
Jennifer, I think you're the first person to actually say that book title out loud, and it just really thrilled me to hear it, and I love the way you said it, and I'm so glad to be here with you today because you're one of my favorite people.
Oh my gosh, you're one of my favorite people too, and I'm excited about your next book.
Yeah, it's something that came from a lot of pain. I used to, in a former life, do new manager coaching and consulting, and realized that rather than spending a lot of time helping them become good managers, I spent the majority of my time helping them navigate and deal with their poor managers. And it was really an eye-opening experience.
Wow. Well, I know what you've done with YouMap and with some of your other books, and I can't wait to see the impact that I know that this next book is going to have. On that note, YouMap is really a movement. It's become a movement, and we would love to hear more about what actually inspired you to do the work that you're doing today. How did you get from where you are now to where you were before you discovered your calling? Because it really is a calling, right?
Yeah, it really is. Interestingly, so my mother is an executive coach, and I decided I would be an executive coach. And that's the path I started to go down. I became certified as an executive coach in the corporate world, and I was working with leaders and their teams. And interestingly, I started doing volunteer work with my church, with job seekers. I met a guy in my home group. He had founded this nonprofit organization called Crossroad Careers. And he was in my home group, and he was telling me about his work, and I was very interested in helping the unemployed, misemployed, and underemployed. Like, these were terms I had never heard before. And he invited me to come out to a workshop and a one-on-one group coaching session that they would do. And I started to notice all these people in massive crisis in their life. They would have marriage problems because of the financial strain that was going on because of the job loss. And really, like, this career thing was impacting every area of their life. They were living in fear. They were about to lose their home. There were all kinds of things going on. And I thought, I can take this same skill set that I'm using to help executives become more successful and help people get out of some pretty serious crisis. And I just felt that was a much more purposeful and meaningful thing for me to do based on my own values.
And there are so many people that are in careers where they're unfulfilled. And I work with a lot of people who are in that place as well. And I've also been in this space, right? I find that there are so many people that are taught to believe that success only can look a certain way. And so they may end up in a career because they thought that that's what they had to do or had to settle for, versus really finding something that aligns with their values and strengths, which is really what you're doing with YouMap, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, there are two lies that people buy. The first is that there's nothing better out there. This is the best paying job I'm going to get. And that's what matters, that I have this big paycheck or whatever. And the second lie that people buy is, well, you can't truly be fulfilled and happy in work. That's just a dream that, motivational speakers try to sell you. And those two lies kept me stuck in a job. It was like the great paycheck and, well, work is hard anyway, so it's not going to get any better. So I might as well just have a good paycheck. Boy, was I wrong.
For me, it was a little bit different. I did love my job for a long time, but then over a period of time, I started to feel unchallenged and unfulfilled. For me, I think it was because I, like so many other people, had chased after things outside of myself, right? Thinking that would bring me the fulfillment and joy that I was looking for.
You're going to have differences in where the career satisfaction breaks down because there are 4 different pillars of career satisfaction. So for me, my career satisfaction was breaking down at the values, and some other people's are going to be breaking down at what their natural giftedness is. They don't feel like they're using their natural gifts and they're kind of working against who they are. Then you're going to have other people who are doing skills that really just drain the life out of them. And then you're going to have other people who they just don't care about what they're doing. They're just not interested in the work they're doing. So based on where your breakdowns are happening, you're going to have a different experience of what dissatisfaction looks like. And some people I meet have a breakdown across all 4 areas. And that's a crisis at that point because it's just not sustainable.
Absolutely. When you began to pursue this path, were you kind of all in right away and confident in what you were doing? Or did you experience any doubts or fears that held you back? I ask this question because there are so many people out there, right, that have these visions, these dreams on their heart to do something, but they might be feeling held back.
Yes, I absolutely was held back by my Excel spreadsheet with all my numbers in it. I had this Excel spreadsheet that I created, and I thought, how much money do I think I could make doing this career coaching business? And how much do I have going out? I had kids in private school at the time, and actually one at a woman that came to the house to help me with my daughter. So I had a lot of child related expenses, and I really wasn't willing to change my lifestyle. We had come out of the public school system because of a serious bullying problem. So I removed my kids from the school system. I would have to put them back in because they were both being pretty heavily bullied, and we weren't getting any assistance really from the school. So that was a serious hesitation. How am I going to afford to keep my kids in the school they're in? And I worked those numbers. I worked that spreadsheet hour after hour. I sliced and diced. I got as creative as possible. And it wasn't working. The numbers weren't working. I'm not going to be able to do this. But I was becoming more and more and more unhappy. I would have headaches all afternoon on Friday just from the culmination of being in a bad fit for me. And I would get grumpy and short with my kids. And it was just a terrible place to be. And eventually I walked into my husband's office because he works from home. And I said to him, we're either going to trust God if he's calling me to this, that it's going to work out, or we're not going to trust. And he just kind of stood there and he was like, all right, let's do it. And that was 5 years ago. And I am not homeless. I still live in my house. My kids stayed in their school. I cannot explain the math of how it worked out, but it just did. I would get to the point where I would say, all right, I have $5 in the bank and I've got tuition coming out for them from this school in 3 days. And you know what? I'm going to let it go. I'm going to release it. And I'm going to just trust that the provision will come. And wouldn't you know, the next day I'd get a phone call. Yes, let's work together. I'd send the invoice and boom, money in my PayPal account to cover what I needed by that plus $20 more. And just that constant faith and constant provision with each need showed up, and that has stretched into a 5-year provision.
Oh my gosh, what you just said is so important, Kristin, because that's what it is. It's faith. as humans, we kind of are programmed to think that if we want something done, that we need to do it ourselves. Or when it comes to the subject of having faith, we think of having faith when we're comfortable or having faith within our comfort zone. But when it comes to what I view as what faith really means, which is when you can't see the path ahead, right? There are so many people that because they can't see the path ahead, they choose not to take that path. Our mind is limited to what we know to be possible and to not be possible. We can't see the big picture. We can't see what God sees, right? And that's why it's so important to follow that higher guidance, to follow our intuition, because things often work out. And as you explained, even better than you could ever imagine.
Yeah. And there was a reason I was having this draw to do this. There was a reason I met that man who brought me into this career pivot and a different focus. There was a reason I had had all the jobs I had. I had a very twisted career path with working in all different types of roles and working with all different types of people in industries. And my career looks like a total mess. But in hindsight, it perfectly equipped me to work with people in the work that I do and understanding all different types of jobs and roles and industries. And I didn't realize at the time it seemed like I was just having an identity crisis, or I was just lost or didn't know what I was, but I was being equipped every step of the way. In hindsight, I look back at my journey and say, oh, that makes perfect sense. So of course, if I'm being brought to this journey and I'm being brought to this call, it made perfect sense that the provision would be there if I took the step. That's the tricky part about faith, is you don't say, okay, I'm going to trust you if you do this. You have to take this step first, and then the provision shows up.
Right. Absolutely. We have to leap first. We have to take that action.
Yep. You have to have some skin in the game.
Yeah, we do. And we have to be willing to let go of what we know, to be open to receive what's ahead.
Yeah, trust. You demonstrate trust, and then that trust is rewarded.
It is, absolutely. On that note, all of our experiences in our lives shape who we are, just as you were actually explaining. And what experience in your life do you feel has been the most significant in shaping who you've become today?
Oh, I mean, without a doubt, it's my parents. So a lot of people, the majority of people I meet, I would say, are having to work through the baggage of their childhood, because hurt people. So we all have to kind of grow up and grow out of our wounds and our trauma and all the things that happen to us. But most of my wounds and trauma came as an adult. My first marriage, miscarriages, I really didn't have that in my childhood. In my formative years, when my confidence was being shaped, I had very supportive parents who spoke possibility into me. So I've always had a very optimistic attitude about what I'm capable of. I shouldn't say always. I didn't have that when I was a teen, but once I became into kind of like the world of work, I had that. But teenage years are just kind of a wash for confidence. But really, my mother used to say to me, you could be a vice president of a company someday. And I would look at her and say, why not the president? Why can't I be the president? And so that's really how I was raised, with this. You can be anything you can be, because my mother is a coach and she realizes that that's not the case. We have to align to what we're good at and what our aptitude is. But in aligning to what I'm good at, there was really not a ceiling on the possibility of what I could achieve. So I don't see a lid on my potential. I don't have a lid. I don't have a ceiling. And that's really from my childhood.
It sounds like your childhood was amazing. I can imagine having a mother as a coach, how wonderful that was and how wonderful that still is for you. Even if someone had a rough childhood, right? What they felt was a rough childhood, still, it's true that we have unlimited potential and that we don't have to allow our experiences to define who we are going forward, right? I mean, we always have a choice.
Well, the thing is I just grew up with the truth. And so other people have to turn the lie around that they were told. You're absolutely right. None of us have a lid on our potential. None of us have that ceiling. It's just that some of us were given a lie growing up. And so you have to get to the point where you recognize that was a lie, that was not the truth. That was a person doing the best they could with the tools they had, and they really just didn't have the capacity or the ability to be what we needed them to be. But that's the only difference, is I'm not a better person, a different person, a more potential-oriented person. Everybody has that potential. I was just told the truth in my childhood, where other people have to come to the point where they recognize they were told a lie.
And also understanding that the people who taught them, right, chances are they were doing the best that they could and working off of what they knew. But we don't have to allow that to.
No, it's really just making a choice. Like you said, am I going to have a fixed mindset, or am I going to have a growth mindset? And my fixed mindset tells me I have all these limitations. I'm not capable of anything more than where I am. Who I am, the resources I have, and what I know are fixed in time. And a growth mindset says, hey, I'm on an upward trajectory, and I can always get better and better every day and end up in the place where I set a goal to arrive at. And so that growth mindset is what becomes so critical.
Absolutely. And that our power resides in the present, right? Because whether we know it or not, we are creating something with our thoughts and our feelings 24/7, right? And so many people choose to kind of stay stuck in the past or regretting the past, and unknowingly that is actually creating their future. So accepting what we can learn from the past, knowing that our future exists in potential, and focusing on the now.
Absolutely. I always say that the marriage I have with my husband is just a product of many days of living like that's the only day we had together. So every day we affirm one another. Every day we carve out time to spend time with each other. So there's an intention in our behavior. And I think what people do is they put themselves on autopilot in their career, in their marriage. It's like when you drive somewhere that you drive a lot and you just sort of end up there and you don't even know how you got there, just relying on those kind of fixed patterns. And that happens in our life. We put our career on autopilot, our relationships on autopilot, and then we're like, wow, how did we get here? It's because we drifted. We didn't intentionally steer.
I love what you said about living as if each day is your only day together. That's so true. And you see that, right, on bumper stickers and in all kinds of different places. And I've talked about it before as well, how tomorrow is never promised and how we shouldn't take time for granted. But it's so true.
Mm-hmm. And we both made a decision to do that. So it's the funny little things we do. When my husband travels or I travel, we will text each other. I'm on the plane. I'm on the ground. Like when we take off, when we land, I love you. Instead of waiting till we get to the hotel at night to call or whatever, we keep our finger on each other's pulse, not in a weird micromanagey, like insecure way. It's just, I want you to know that you're on my mind.
Absolutely.
That's been really helpful for us. So it's interesting because I am raising two sets of kids in that I have an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old, and I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I have an opportunity to kind of evaluate some of the parenting mistakes I made the first time and do things differently the second time. But most people don't have that type of ability to, and the mistakes are the mistakes. I can't change those with my older kids. But why have regret and why look back and say, oh, I wish I did things differently? Why not set an intention? Here are goals that I would like to have in how I parent and the type of children that I'm looking to shape, or here's what I'd like to do in my career, or here's what I'd like to have in my relationships, and actually set intentions. And then each day, are the behaviors, are the ways I'm showing up, or is the way I'm spending my time, is that going to lead to the intention that I set?
You are so speaking my language. Of course, there's a reason why you're one of my favorite people. Setting an intention, what you said, that is so key. So earlier I had mentioned that whether we know it or not, we're creating something all the time. So why not be intentional about it? So many people live throughout their lives feeling like they're a victim of circumstance, when the truth is nothing happens at random. So why not set the intention for what you want?
My mother raised me with this expression I've never forgotten. Now, keep in mind, there are things that happen, like if a tree falls on someone and kills them. I mean, there's really not anything you could have done to be more intentional to not have a freak nature accident take your life. But when you look at people's lives overall, my mother would say, people's lives are largely a product of their decisions. And I think if we embrace that a little bit more and had that sort of accountability, we would live happier lives, because we would realize that we do have choices that we're making that lead to where we end up, daily choices we're making.
Absolutely. And also in looking at the decisions that we make as a learning, right? There isn't really failure. There's only opportunity to learn. And even when we don't receive something the way that we want it, right? It's another step closer for us to reaching our destination.
And it's never too late to course correct. That's the thing. I have a 22-year-old son, and I used to work a lot when he was a kid, because that's when I was in the corporate part of my life, right? Where I was not here. I was commuting and spending all day there and commuting back, and he'd be awake for 30 minutes and go to bed kind of thing. But it's not too late. He doesn't live with me anymore. He's got a job. He's in his final year of college. He's in the city where he plans to work someday. But it's never too late for me to pick up the phone and say, here are some things that I want to share with you that I wish I had done differently. And here's how I'd like to improve our relationship going forward. We have a good relationship, but it's never too late to address those things, to say, hey, I did things that I wish I had done differently, and see how can we reshape our relationship going forward.
Absolutely. What advice would you have for others who are in a place where they're feeling, that call to do more, or even for someone who may have taken the leap and they're establishing a new path and they're questioning?
It all starts with your values, right? I mean, I know it sounds so trite to say that. Everyone's talking about values and your why, and it's kind of like the in thing to talk about, but it's really game changing. If you don't know what you value, you're not going to know what's meaningful to you. So that's really where I would start. And so really reflecting on what were times in my life that I felt alive, that I felt a sense of meaning and purpose, and journal those out. Journal out those things. What was it about those things that made me feel happy and satisfied and fulfilled? And what was it about those things? Was it that I was growing as a person? Was it that I was doing meaningful work or making a difference? Was it that I achieved something? What were the things I valued about that? And then once you know what you value, where are your felt passions? Are there missions or organizations that you feel very aligned with? Are there products or industries that you feel passionate about? Once you know what you value, and then you investigate the who are the people? Like, where do I have the felt passions, and who would I serve with my values? That's when things start to click.
That advice is invaluable. Thank you. I mean, journaling is a really effective tool to use as an outlet for us to gain clarity.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can discover about yourself when you take time away from the noise and give yourself personal margin to really explore. All the answers are within. We just don't take time to spend time there because we have no personal margin in this noisy world.
Absolutely, especially in the day and age with which we're living right now. It's so critical, and a lot of people treat it as a nice to have, but it really is a necessity to make that space for yourself every day to establish, that deeper connection in terms of knowing yourself.
I mean, if you don't give yourself that personal margin, eventually you're going to have mental health issues. And that can be as small as stress-related illnesses up to, having an episode where you need to seek medical help. I mean, mental health isn't just the extreme, right? It starts small and we ignore it, and then it becomes a crisis.
It does. And what you said is important there about ignoring it, because that's what happens, right? When we suppress it, it eats away at our insides and it starts to manifest itself in different ways. By making time for ourselves, whether it's in meditation or journaling, that allows us to process what's on the inside. And a lot of people also suppress things that they don't feel great about, right? But the thing is you have to process all of that as well. And it's okay to feel however you feel. Allow yourself to be in that space and then to look at how you can move forward.
Yeah, I remember one time someone saying to me, we're like an orange. When you squeeze an orange, you get sweet juice that comes out. And whatever's inside of us, that's what comes out when we're squeezed. So when we're stressed, when we're yelling at our loved ones or shooting the finger at people in traffic, that's just a reflection of what's inside of us at that time. And so if we're not processing and working through, like you said, through meditation and journaling or prayer or going for walks in nature, if we're not doing those things, then what's inside us is what's going to come out every time we're squeezed.
Absolutely. So for someone who's feeling guided, right? It's trust. Follow that guidance and trust.
Yeah. And there's nothing, have a plan. I had a plan. I thought of all the ways that I could generate revenue. I started writing articles on LinkedIn to put myself out there and my services. So I took steps to get found and to really be seen by people. And LinkedIn was a great tool, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to be networking in person, in your neighborhood, in the grocery store, like with the other parents or friends at activities that you do or alumni associations. You want to build a network of supporters, a broad network, not just put all your eggs in one basket. So I did do those things. And then I created financial milestone goals and I created savings goals and I put some money away before I quit my job. And so there were steps that I took to have a plan. I wasn't just like, oh, this is my purpose, so I'm going to quit my job. I have $5 in the bank. There's no reason to be reckless. Save a little bit of money, cut your expenses. Don't go to Starbucks for a while and put the Starbucks money that you spend every week in savings. There are steps that you can take and reducing some of those unnecessary expenses. Maybe you don't take a family trip one year and you put that in your fund to pursue whatever it is you're thinking of pursuing. And that's my advice, is have a plan, but also have faith. There
are so many nuggets of wisdom that you just shared in the last 60 seconds. That we could have a whole nother conversation about, because one is showing up. When you talked about showing up and networking, so many people are afraid to be vulnerable, but in order to do the work that you want to do what your soul is guiding you to do, you have to be willing to show up. And so mindset is a big piece there. And then also what you said about having a plan, right? And the plan might look different for different people. And I feel like the key in being able to successfully execute whatever you plan is being willing to take action when you're feeling guided to take that action. Because this actually happened for me, and I did have a plan, but I waited too long to leave the company where I was at, and it was very toxic. And what happened is that it became so painful for me that even though I had a plan, I ended up just leaving. I gave a month's notice and left. There were things that were already in motion for me, but the whole reason why I was even still there was just because I was afraid to leave. And I don't want anyone to wait until it gets to that point, because once you feel that call to change, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, and life flows a lot better when we are willing to surrender.
It's like a banana, right? There's a point in time when a banana is really good. When it's really, really green, it's bitter, it's hard to peel. So the timing isn't right. So you need to wait and be patient. But then if you wait too long, that black peel, banana inside is disgusting and inedible. So you can pull the trigger too quickly, but you can absolutely wait too long. And Colin Powell has an excellent rule of thumb that when it's time to pull the trigger on a decision, wait till you have at least 40% of the information or whatever it is you need, but don't wait beyond 70% because you're never going to have everything you need, everything in place, everything perfect, because that doesn't exist.
So very, very true. So if someone wants to learn more about what you're up to, where can they find you? And is there anything else going on that you want us to know about?
There's a lot going on. I have a lot of travel coming up. I'm doing a Disrupt HR talk. I'm doing an ATD talk on YouMap, which is pretty exciting. I'm facilitating a women's retreat in September. I have a lot of fun things coming up. I think probably the best place to see what's up with me is right on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Kristin, Kristin, Sherry, Sherry is my profile. My website is myyoumap.com. I'm actually in the middle of creating a new website at kristinsherry.info. And I bought the domain and the website's built, but I don't have that URL pointing to it yet. So maybe by the time this comes out, it actually will be working. So I probably should just say kristinsherry.info is my personal site that has like my podcast appearances and speaking and things on there.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm positive that there will be listeners that will definitely want to learn more about the work that you're doing with YouMap and with your books and with so many other amazing things that you have happening. I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. And it just is always such a joy to speak with you. And I'm just really honored that you are here with us.
I love the big things, the heavy things that you talk about, and not heavy in a bad way, just inspiring and important. I love the big conversations that you have. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Jennifer.
Thank you for listening to the Awake and On Purpose podcast. Please visit us and subscribe to the podcast at awakeandonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can connect with your higher purpose and take that leap of faith to make your impact in the world, visit us at jenniferspor.com. And while you're there, be sure to join our email list for exclusive offers and a weekly dose of inspiration.